As a result of the events in Ferguson, some in Congress are now calling for a hearing on the use of excessive and deadly force by police. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee chair, they point to what appears to be a continuing pattern of deadly force by police against unarmed African Americans in cities across our country. Joining me now is one of the congressmen calling for this hearing, Tennessee Representative Steve Cohen. He joins us here in our studio. Thank you for being here.
Nice to be with you.
What do you believe is behind this pattern, and what are you hoping comes out of this hearing?
I think for years and years and years, police have not taken into consideration part of the deadly force law, which says resort to deadly force as a last means, and they've taken action quicker than they should. Police have got a tough job. Some have lost their lives. They protect us, but they should resort to deadly force. And with African American citizens, too many times, they have taken the use of deadly force before they could have retreated, used a taser, used some other means of apprehension or settling the dispute without taking a life. And I'm afraid that it's just a miscalculation and a misjustice that's gone for years. And much of what we see, you know, I passed a resolution in Congress in 2008 to apologize for slavery and Jim Crow. We didn't have the Senate concurrent at that time. But we should have had a discussion on race at that time. We still need to have a discussion on race in America. President Obama talked about it early on in a great speech, but nothing's been to follow it up. And the problems we've got right now with poverty, with disease and lack of health care in the inner city, even though we've got an Affordable Care Act, which has helped tremendously, although being fought by the Republicans. But the problems with jobs, unemployment in the inner city, crime in the inner city, and the problem with commutations or the lack thereof and people being warehoused in prison, which all come from the drug war. All these things come together, and there are miasma of conditions that permeate America that need to be dealt with, and the Congress needs to deal with them, both Republican and Democrat, and not avoid dealing with those issues as Democrats or Republicans.
I want to go back to a point that you were actually just making. A new article in The Economist compares police shooting deaths in the U.S. to other industrialized countries, and it's very interesting. In 2012, there were 0 in Japan and Britain. There was a total of 8 in Germany. In the U.S., there was 409. Does that surprise you?
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't. You know, there's a different system of law enforcement, a different pattern. I just got back from a week in Ireland. I didn't see a policeman the entire time I was in Ireland. For some reason, our communities are more like military states, with police equipped with weapons now by the government, military-type equipment, to make them almost acting as if they are at war with some of the citizenry, and mostly it's inner city and it's black, and people are more likely to be shot. We need to have entirely new perspectives on the use of that equipment or the giving of that equipment to police departments. They don't need that to use against their own citizens.
And that is as publicly being addressed and to be continued, obviously. But I also want to ask you, I mean, how much of a problem is it the fact that we have so many guns in our culture?
That's a big problem. I mean,
obviously, in all fairness, just being devil's advocate here, I think it's fair to understand in the United States of America, chances are pretty good that somebody might have a gun.
Well, it is, and the fact is, people have guns, and the court has ruled there's a Second Amendment right. I still question that. I think it's a militia argument, but the court ruled. In Memphis, there was a death yesterday of a woman. A bullet was shot in the house, and she's 30-something-year-old woman's dead. Police officer was killed last week. They broke in to serve a warrant, and the people shot her. There are guns everywhere, and there's a problem. But the Republican Party, and some others as well, are tied to the NRA like the buttons on your blouse, and they're just inseparable. And they're not going to change. And they're not
all legal guns. I mean, if you're talking about different parts of our culture, there are people who may or may not have bought a gun legally. It may or may not be registered.
Well, that's a problem.
So if you're an officer, or if you're anybody, quite frankly, it's just that is obviously a huge problem to have to confront.
Oh, officers have got problems too, and they sometimes see it. But in the case with Mr. Brown, they did not have a weapon present. With the man in St. Louis a week later, whether there was a knife or not is an issue. But I saw that video. There seems like there could be better ways to end the conflict and not have the officer's life be in jeopardy, other than killing the individual. And the idea of killing the individual seems to come first. You're supposed to resort to the use of deadly force. Not that we need policemen, we need a civil society, but they need to be careful about using weapons and taking lives.
Congressman Steve Cohen, thank you very much.
Nice to be with Melissa.